Good morning. Good morning, good morning. It's good to be here this morning. For those of you who are just walking in, we want to welcome you. If this is your first time watching Life Point, our worship service, or first time here, we want to welcome you. We hope that so far you feel like you're at home and that you're with family. And every week we start worship with sharing some things that are happening inside and outside of Life Point. And I just want to remind you, if you don't have our church app yet and you like using apps, then you can download our church app by going to any of your Apple or Android store and just looking up JAX LifePoint, all right? You'll find an app there, and in our app, you can find about announcements, you can submit prayer requests, you can find devotionals, you can find out about how you can get involved at LifePoint with any ministry or give through our church app. And so I want to share the top 3 things happening at LifePoint this weekend if you have not heard about them. All right, so the first one is that we're starting a brand new sermon series, and at LifePoint we usually teach through sermon series, so we'll spend about a month on one topic. And so if you were with us last month, we talked about what? Friends, very good. We talked about friendships and how to be good friends to the people around us. And today we're starting a brand new series called Bless. And so through this series, we're learning how we are blessed and how we're called to be a blessing to those around us. And so whether it's our neighbors, coworkers, friends, or family, God has called us to be a blessing. So that's what we're going to be looking at for the next 5 weeks. Also, next weekend, you must be here next weekend because we're going to be rolling out our life groups. And life groups are groups of people that come together outside of the Sabbath worship time on Saturdays, and we do community together. We share time together, we study the scripture together, and we get to know each other a little bit better. And we believe at LifePoint that through life groups, we get to grow both in relationships and also with God. And so next week, right after church, we're going to have different life groups that are going to be having their stands in the lobby. And so you'll be able to sign up for one or just get more information about what that looks like. So if you've never been in a small group, which is a life group, I encourage you to try it out, all right? You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. Completely nothing to lose. Lastly, I want to encourage you, if you're not volunteering or serving at LifePoint, we have currently different needs that we would love to get you involved. And so if you go to lifepointcfc.org/volunteer, you'll find out at least 5 different ministries that we could get you involved today, all right? And so there's different positions, different time requirements, and different qualifications that we're looking for, but we want to do everything that we can to get you serving others as God serves you. As we go through worship together, today I pray that you may continue to open your heart to God and your mind for what God has for you today. Thank you.
Good morning, church. It's that time in the service where we get to worship God through song. So I'd like to invite you to stand and join us as we sing.
The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see your victory. I'm gonna see your victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord.
I need to tell you something. I'm on a mission. It's a mission. That's a part of something way, way bigger than just you and me. I love
Jesus Yes, Jesus.
And I love people. I want to invite you, your family, our friends, and lots of neighbors to join me at Community as I make
my life
all about this mission of helping
people
find their way back to God.
All right, hopefully that goes away. All right, how's everyone doing this morning? All right, I believe you. I'm glad that you're here this morning. I'm glad you're watching from wherever you're at today. It's good to be here with you. And if you haven't got a chance to talk to someone today before you leave, I hope that someone will approach you, you'll approach someone, because I know that that small gesture can make a difference and change someone's life today. So be a blessing to someone today as we're starting a brand new series called How to Bless Your Neighbor. We're not going to define who your neighbor is today. I'm going to assume that you know who your neighbor is, right? And not just the people that live next to you, but also the people that are sitting around you today. We're learning how we can bless those around us. And before we get into this, I do want to practice something with you this morning. We've all been bombarded throughout our lives with slogans. It doesn't matter if you're 1 year old or if you're a 10, 20, and above year old, you've been bombarded with slogans, and sometimes we don't even realize it, but we memorize them. We memorize them. So we're gonna give it a try this morning. And so I'm gonna start a slogan, you help me finish it out, or you tell me which company it is, okay? Are you ready? Yeah. Are you ready? Yeah. All right, you're ready. All right, so like a good neighbor. We should get some money from them today. Think different.
Live different.
Think different. I guess all of you use Android, so you don't use Apple. That's Apple's slogan. How about melts in your mouth, not in your hand? Very good. And how about just do it? All right, very good. It's funny how easily we memorize those things, and it's good to also memorize. It's also good to memorize what our mission statement is here at LifePoint. So I'm going to put that on the screen for us to read together. And it says like this: connecting people with Jesus by serving our community with love and acceptance. All right? So can we say this together? Connecting people with Jesus by serving our community with love and acceptance. All right? So it's good for churches to have mission statements. It's good for companies to have mission statements or slogans. But we can memorize this. We can put it on a t-shirt. But if we don't do it, how much does this matter? It doesn't matter, right? And so we want to talk today, as we're talking about blessing and being a blessing to others, we want to focus on what it means to connect people to God, right? To connect people that are going through tough times in life, connecting people that have lost hope, connecting people that have lost their jobs, connecting people that have maybe gone through a bad relationship. We want to connect them with Jesus. Now, why would I want to connect anyone with Jesus? Now, this is my personal belief. I want to connect people with Jesus because I know that if they're connected with Jesus, whatever thing they're going through or situation they're going through is going to be a lot better with Jesus than without Jesus. I know that if they're connected to Christ, most likely God is going to provide a way through or a way out of the situations they find themselves in. And so unless Jesus is part of the equation, it's really, really hard to get through life. And so we have to find ways to connect people with Jesus. Now, going back to Nike's slogan, just do it. If I wear Nikes like I'm wearing today, and that was a coincidence, if I'm wearing Nikes like I'm wearing Nikes today, does that mean that I'll do anything? No? If I put LeBron James basketball shoes on, does that mean that I'll play like LeBron James? No. If I put Tiger Woods golf shoes on, does that mean that I'll learn how to golf? No. I went golfing about a month ago for the first time, and I probably should have worn those. I think I would have done a little bit better than I did. I'm not going to tell you how I did, but I'll just let you guess. It wasn't good. It wouldn't have changed anything, right? It probably wouldn't have changed anything, right? The slogans don't change anything unless we choose to do something about it. Okay, so just because I call myself a Christian or just because I'm part of a church does not mean or does not equate that I'm on the same mission that Jesus was. And so we have to be intentional and we have to make decisions and we have to commit to connect people to Jesus because that's what Jesus does for us. And unless we're making that decision, this is never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen unless we choose to make it happen. And so I believe that throughout the Bible, we have clues and we have encouragement and we have the answers to how to achieve that. It's not just saying that we will do it, but it's following Jesus' example to actually do it. And this is what I believe. I believe this 100%. That you already have what it takes to get it done. You already have it. You don't need to go to seminary. I've been there. You don't need to go there. You don't need to be part of church leadership. You don't need to be X amount of years in a church. You don't need to study the Bible through and through. You don't need to do X amount of Bible studies. You don't even need to pray a certain amount of time in order for God to give you what it takes to achieve the mission. So I want you to turn to the person next to you right now and tell them you have what it takes. Can you do that quickly? You have what it takes. You have what it takes. And so as we go through today's message and as we go through this series, you will realize and you will have the tools to be able to play out what God has already put in your heart. All right? So we're starting today with a story found in the Old Testament in Genesis chapter 12. All right, you know the story, beginning of Genesis, God creates the world, he creates Adam and Eve, he creates a perfect environment, then one day they choose to eat from the tree they weren't supposed to eat from, and so they have to be removed from the garden, and so God tells them, now your life is going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. Adam, you're going to have to work the land, and you have to sweat the land to work it in order to get food from it, and then he looks to Eve and he says, every time you have a child, Eve, you're going to feel the pains of delivering a child. And so from that moment all the way to Genesis chapter 12, because it's a long time between those two stories, the world has not become a better place. The world has become more and more difficult, more challenging, more division, more hatred, more sin. And God shows up. And God shows up to an individual that you've heard about before. It's Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. This is what it says. God told Abraham, go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great. You will be a blessing to those around you. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Now, Abraham didn't have everything that he wanted at that point in his life. Abraham was somewhat wealthy, but he didn't have everything he wanted. He was married to a woman named Sarah, and for a long time, even at that point, they had wanted to have a child, and they had no children. And for a father in biblical times not to have a child was a very, very tough thing because in those terms, he had no one to pass on his inheritance or his blessing. And so he wasn't completely satisfied when God calls him, but yet at the same time, God asks him to leave his home, his family, and everything he knows. There's a word that pops up in God's calling over and over again, and I think you caught it. We find the word bless or blessing 5 times in this call that God makes to Abraham. He says, Abraham, I know you're longing for something more in life. Abraham, I know you realize that the world is not the way it should be, so I'm going to bless you. I'm not just going to bless you in the way you think I need to bless you. I'm not just going to give you a child, but I'm going to bless you in such a way that you will be a blessing to the entire planet. What if God made this promise to you today? What if he came to you today and said, hey, I want you, I have a mission and purpose for you, and I need you to leave everything you know, but listen to this. I'm going to bless you, and you're going to bless others. And I'm going to keep blessing you, and you're going to bless others, and the world's going to be a better place because of you. Do you think that God is saying anything different today to us as he was telling Abraham? Do you still believe that God wants us to bless others? How many of you still believe that? Now, how many of you believe that God is blessing you? All right. We're on a good path. So God called Abraham, and Abraham left, and we see this promise being played out throughout his life. He becomes this person that is blessed. And everything that Abraham puts his hand on, it is multiplied. So Abraham goes from being having somewhat wealth to being now generational wealthy and able to pass on this wealth to his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and this blessing goes on. He also becomes like this figurehead in Israel, in Judaism. He becomes this father of faith. And everywhere he went, he was blessed, but he also was a blessing to others. Now, throughout the Bible, we find this word show up over 300 times. The Hebrew meaning for the word bless or blessed means it's something that you've received, a gift that you received that you do not deserve. Blessed. And we see this not only in the Old Testament and the New Testament, we also see this playing out in Jesus' life. Probably Jesus' most important message, the most important words that came out of his mouth are found in Matthew chapter 5 in the Sermon of the Mount, where he begins to release and share these teachings that are coming straight from heaven and how to live in the kingdom of heaven here on earth. And we find that this teaching is all about being blessed. He says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He says, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are those that are meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He goes on, and it gets a little bit more difficult towards the end. He says, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. He says, you're blessed. In all those situations, and at some point we'll bring this text back and we'll do a series on it, but in all these situations, if we remove the word blessed from there, it doesn't seem too positive. It doesn't seem like a good life decision or a good life focus to be in any of those categories, because in all those categories, it feels like we're losing. It feels like we're on the wrong end of the situation or the equation or the crisis. But Jesus says in all of those circumstances, he says, if you're going through anything like that, because you're on mission with me, you are blessed. You're blessed. Not only did Jesus teach this, but it's amazing that people that were nothing like Jesus gravitated toward Jesus. People that were not attending church, people that were far from church and from God, people that were oppressed or marginalized, people that were poor, women and children, those that society had pushed to the margins, they flocked towards Jesus. And one of the most amazing scenarios in Jesus' life is there in Mark chapter 10, where parents are bringing their children to Jesus, and they're wanting Jesus just to put his hands on their children. Right? They believe that he has something special, that he's different. And they bring him their children. And when we don't have all the text here, but you can go back and read it. When they bring their children, the disciples get upset and say, no, Jesus has no time for little kids. Jesus doesn't have time to be distracted by kids and what they want and what they need. No, keep them away. And Jesus catches them and says, no, bring those to me, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. And then he took the children, and he took them into his arms and placed his hands on their heads, and he blessed them. We see those that society had no value on, that Jesus welcomed them in, and he blesses them. There's another story. It's a flip side of children. There's a different man in society, and you've heard this story before. It's found in Luke chapter 19, and Jesus is actually he's going on his journey, on his mission, and he's going through the city of Jericho. And as he's walking through the city, his purpose was not to stay in Jericho. His purpose was to go through Jericho to get to another location. But as he's going through Jericho, there was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. And so what does he do? He ran ahead, climbed a sycamore tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. And so when Jesus comes by, he looks up at Zacchaeus, and he says, "Zacchaeus, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today." Now, this doesn't mean too much for us today, but in Jesus' time, a tax collector and the chief tax collector in the region wasn't really well accepted in that society. He was a person that had kind of embodied everything that was wrong in the world. Not only was he representing Rome in that small town by taking taxes, but Rome would tell the tax collector, hey, if you take a cut, make sure that we're getting our cut. So as long as we're getting our 5% or 10%, whatever it was, you can ask for more. We don't care as long as we get our percentage. And so the people knew that Zacchaeus or any tax collector was stealing money from their pockets. He was the reason that sometimes families wouldn't have enough to eat dinner or to eat breakfast. He was the reason that some families couldn't go on a vacation. He was the reason that some families were broken down. He was the reason that some families had to sell their homes and leave town. And so Zacchaeus was not a very loved man or accepted man in town. Not only does the text say he's a tax collector, but he is the chief tax collector. So not only has he cheated them, but he's taught other tax collectors in how to cheat the people. Jesus steps into his house. He didn't plan to go to his house that day, but when he saw him, he said, "Zacchaeus, I'm going to your house to eat." Now, maybe for us, this is a little bit harder to accept than Jesus welcoming children into his arms and blessing them. Like if we were to have a portrait at home or a painting at home, we'd probably buy the one with Jesus with babies in his hands, right? Nobody's buying Jesus with hanging out with people from the IRS at home, right? Nobody's buying that portrait. Or maybe you are, I don't know. I'm not. But that's what Jesus is doing. He went into the tax collector's home, and not only did he defile himself, make himself dirty by going into his home, he sat down and had a meal with him. Now, Jesus could see what no one else could see. You see, Jesus is the most optimistic person in this universe. He sees the worst situation. He sees the worst crisis or the worst need. He sees the worst type of combination of human beings in a room, and he's still optimistic. Now, I believe that Jesus is always optimistic because not only does he know what's on the outside, he knows what's in the inside. And not only does he know what's in the inside, he knows how to change what's in the inside. So when everyone else saw Zacchaeus as this evil being, an evil person, Jesus could see Zacchaeus being transformed into someone that was going to be blessed and was going to bless other people. God wants to change the way we not only view ourselves in being blessed, he wants us to change the way we view others, because if he's optimistic about us, he's probably optimistic about our neighbors. He's probably optimistic about that family member. He's probably optimistic about that person that you have stopped talking to. He's probably optimistic about the person that constantly posts on Facebook or social media about things that you're not really agreeing with. You see, because Jesus can see what we don't see. And so when Jesus stepped in his home, I imagine nobody else wanted to step in there. Nobody else wanted to be associated with Zacchaeus. Nobody else wanted to be caught in the selfie that was going to go online and was going to go viral. Nobody else wanted to do what Jesus did, but he went in there and check out what happened. As Zacchaeus climbed down, they went to his home, and after he has that meal with Jesus and that conversation with Jesus, this is the outcome of a conversation with Jesus. He goes and he says, I will give half of my wealth to who? To the poor. Those people that I've impoverished, I'm giving half of my wealth to them. And he says, if I have cheated anyone on their taxes, it's not if, it's not if, but of all the people I have cheated on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. Now, how does one person walk into a house one way and walk out another? How does one person that was hated now go to become a blessing to everyone in the town? Because this one individual, someone was optimistic, someone blessed him, and his life was changed. Church, what if there was people around us today that needed this type of love and acceptance from us? What if there was people in our lives right now that were waiting, that they're just waiting for someone to notice them, someone to listen to them, someone to acknowledge them, someone to recognize them, someone to invite them out for lunch or for dinner, someone to invite them to do something with? What if there was a bunch of Zacchaeuses in our life that are feeling marginalized and oppressed, that are feeling alone and are needing the church to wake up and step into mission with Christ to become the blessing that God wants us to be? And so Jesus says this: salvation has come into this home when? Today. Salvation. That's a big word, right? Jesus steps out, and the first thing he says is, this man Zacchaeus that you all hate, this man Zacchaeus that you want thrown in jail, this man Zacchaeus that nobody can stand, this man is saved. He's going to be with me in heaven for all time, because he has shown himself to be a true son of who? How is he a true son of Abraham? How is he a true son of Abraham? He's become a true son of Abraham because, remember, Abraham was called to be a blessing, and now Zacchaeus has chosen to be a blessing to others. Jesus finishes off and says, for the Son of Man came to seek and save those who were what? Lost. So church, who are the lost people in our lives today? Who are they? Who are the people that we've kind of given up on? Who are the people that we don't no longer want to forgive anymore? Who are the people that we don't want to give any more chances to step in a relationship anymore? Who are the people today that we're ignoring because we'd rather ignore than try to deal with their situation or the past? Jesus' mission was to connect people back to God, and he went after everyone that society and the church had pushed aside, and one by one, he went to every single group to bring them hope. He went to every single group to bless them. He went to every single group to remind them of their value and of their worth. So people that were considered the untouchables, like the lepers that had this sickness of this disease on their skin that would kind of eat away piece by piece. People that no one wanted to be close with. People that were living outside of town because no one wanted to even see them or smell them or be close to them. Jesus decided to make friends of lepers, and not only make friends of them, he decided to go to the full extent to touch and to heal and to restore. Tax collectors and sinners, women and children, no matter the walk of life, Jesus was there to be a blessing, to reconnect those people back to God. And so not only do we find this teaching in Jesus and Abraham's stories, we'd also find it in Paul's teaching. Galatians chapter 3, verse 7 to 9 says that the real children, not the ones that were born in Israel or the ones that consider themselves to be Jews, they're not the real children of Abraham. He says these are the real children. Those who have put their faith in who? In God. What's more, the scripture looked forward to this time when God would make the Gentile right in the sight because of their faith. God proclaimed this good news to Abraham long ago when he said, all nations will be blessed through you. All nations will be blessed. Not one nation, not two nations, not three nations, but all nations would be blessed because of you. So all who put their faith in Christ share this same blessing. The same blessing that Abraham received because of his faith. So if we say to follow Jesus, if we call ourselves Christians and followers of Christ, if we call ourselves Seventh-day Adventists, there's no exception for us. There's no excuse to say just because we believe we worship on one day that we're saved, or just because we believe the right set of beliefs we're saved. That's not what saves us. And in this story, that's not what saved Zacchaeus. When Zacchaeus received salvation was when Zacchaeus chose to receive the blessing that could only come from Christ, and when he was freely willing to share that blessing to others. So could it be that God has kind of put himself on standby in your life because you're distracted, or you're blinded, or you're choosing to go a different direction that he wants you to go? Could it be that God is holding back his blessings in your life because you're not willing or open to be a blessing to those around you? Could it be that God is holding his forgiveness back from you today because you will not forgive so-and-so because, if you knew what they did to me, if you knew what they said to me, if you knew how they treated me, if you knew how they ignored me, there's nothing that compares. There's absolutely nothing that compares in terms of how we treat God. And if the God of heaven is willing to forgive me for all the times that I've ignored him, for all the times that I have rejected him, for all the times that I've gone the opposite direction that he wanted me to go, was suggesting to go, for all the times that instead of being a blessing, I was a curse to others, if that God is willing to forgive me, church, I also have the power and ability to forgive those that have harmed me. And when we choose to step into that spiritual realm of being in the world but not of the world, is when not only do we receive God's blessing, but we become a blessing in every place we are, with every conversation we have, and every relationship we form. We become a blessing, not because we're good, not because we're better, not because we're perfect, but because we have received this free gift that only comes from God. So we are called, we're blessed to be a blessing to others. And so God has given you resources. God has given you influence. God has given you time. You see, you already have what it takes. We were talking about this. We had a good conversation with our elders this week, and part of our conversation was talking about, what it takes to follow Jesus. And sometimes following Jesus means leaving everything behind. In history, we have seen where individuals were willing to sell their homes, willing to sell their cars, willing to sell property, willing to give money away because they felt in the moment that's what it meant to follow Jesus. But many times, and I think personally most of the times, God's not asking me to sell stuff or give stuff away. Most of the time, he's asking me to use the things he already has given me to bless other people. So if God has blessed me with a roof over my head, how am I using that roof to bless someone else? If God has put food in my refrigerator and I have 3 meals, 4 meals, almost 5 meals a day, how am I using those meals for someone that doesn't have 1 meal a day? If God has blessed me with a car, with a vehicle, or with any type of resource, how am I using what God has already blessed me with to bless someone else? Because that's what the blessing is. God allows us to function and move, and he blesses all our initiatives. Some we see, some we don't. And he's not asking us to give it up. He's asking us to use it in order to bless someone in our lives today. So church, are we willing to step into that? Well, you might be saying, well, Ruben, you don't know what my bank account looks like. Trust me, it looks no different than mine. But God has maybe not blessed you with financial resources, but he's giving you time. He's given you 2 ears, 1 mouth, 2 eyes. You see, God has given us the ability to spend time with other people, and most of the time, it's not going to be giving money away. Most of the time, the biggest difference that you can make in someone's life is by giving of your time to listen to someone's story. Just taking the moment to ask someone how their day went. Just to ask someone, hey, how are you doing? Just to ask the simple questions that will begin to allow someone to open up and someone to know that someone cares about them. Church, in 2022, what most people need, they want to know is if they're missed, if they're wanted, if they're needed, and if we're willing to listen. Just listen. Those connections can be made. And if you have a hard time listening, which some people do, it's okay. You'll learn with time and practice. But something that you can do right now is just smile. You could smile and smile and smile. And although you may not feel like smiling, I'm not gonna tell you to fake it. I'm just asking you to smile. Because sometimes just smiling will change the way we feel. And if we just smile at someone we don't know today, if we smile at a couple people in the room today, I will promise you the smiles will become contagious, will begin to change the temperature in the room from something distant and cold to warm and friendly. You can be a blessing in any way. And so I'm going to wrap up today. As we go through this series, we're going to talk about these things and how we can have these tools that God has already blessed us with. And so we're going to talk next week about how every blessing can begin with prayer and should begin with prayer. Every blessing should begin with prayer. We're going to talk about that next week, so you can't miss it. We'll talk about that next week. We're going to learn how to be better listeners, myself included, how to become better listeners. I bet you all like this one, right? Maybe I don't need to teach too much about eating. We all like to eat at Life Point, but how we can use food to be a blessing to someone else. We're going to talk about how we can serve others and be a blessing to them. And lastly, we're going to share about how we can share our stories. All of us have stories. All of us have situations and how God has come through and how God has changed our life. And it's amazing when we say yes to God. When we say yes to God, we don't know what's on the other side of that yes. So it's sometimes a little bit scary to say yes because I don't know. If I say yes to God and I start doing these things, I don't know what's gonna happen, right? I don't know what's gonna happen, but the best thing we can do in life is say yes to God. So we can say yes to God and trust Him with the results. All we have to do is be obedient in the moment, be obedient in the present. So as we go through this series, I pray that you may desire to be obedient with me. And whatever God puts in our hearts with these tools that we will learn together, that we may be obedient and just say yes. God, I'm just gonna do that. You want me to talk to a stranger? Yes, let's go do that. You want me to share a meal with someone? Yes, I'm gonna go do that. You want me to listen to that person? God, but that person doesn't stop talking. Yes, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen, and I'm gonna listen, and I'm gonna listen. I wanna wrap up today with a story I heard not too long ago about an individual that was going through a similar journey and went too far. And he was going through a journey and he was asking God, how can I be a blessing in my neighborhood? And he was looking at his neighbors, he was looking at the surroundings, and he just didn't know how to do it. He was a little bit timid, a little bit, afraid just to go up to people. And so he said, I'm just gonna start praying. And so he started praying for his neighbors, and as he got a chance to meet his neighbors, he got their names and started writing down their names on a list. And every morning he would wake up and he would pray for his neighbors. Name by name, he would go down his list. And as he met more neighbors, he would pray for more neighbors. And one day he had a really bad night. He wasn't able to sleep much. He just felt very uncomfortable that something was happening. And he just felt something inside of him telling him, there's something happening with your neighbors. Now he woke up and he says, I don't know which neighbor's in trouble, but he wakes up and he tells his wife, he says, hey, I feel like one of our neighbors is in trouble. We need to pray right now. So they got down on their knees, they started praying. They didn't know which neighbor, but they were praying. And as they finished their prayer, they got their things together, they were leaving the house. As they're leaving their house, they see their front neighbor drives into the parking lot, and something told them, hey, go talk to her. And so they left their bags in their car, they went across the street, and they said, hey, how are you doing? And he says the moment that they asked her how she was doing, she starts crying. That moment, she had just arrived from the doctor's office and she had just found out that she had cancer. She hadn't told her husband, she hadn't told her kids, she hadn't told anyone. The first people that she's telling this to is her neighbors that she knows somewhat well. And as she's crying, this man says, wow, God had put this in my heart. Wow, he's moved by the moment. And they've never told them that they're Christians or they go to church. They've never asked for them to pray together. But in that moment, he feels convicted. He says, hey, I just want to pray for you right now because I know you're going through a lot. I just want to pray for you. Can I pray for you? And his neighbor turns to him and says, you know what? If you would have asked me at any other point, I would have said no. But right now, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm open to believe that there's a God that can help me through this. So right there, they surrounded her. They started praying together. They're all crying together now in the driveway as other neighbors are watching. They're just crying and praying. And they started this relationship that blossomed because God helped her through cancer and remission and getting back healthy. And that led to her wanting to study the Bible and soon later getting baptized. And then 2 of her kids gets baptized, and then the 3rd one gets baptized. And then the older one was left to get baptized. And so now he's formed this relationship with his mom and their kids and also the father. And when the 3rd child gets baptized, he goes up to him and says, hey, I know it's because of you that my wife gave her life to Christ and my 3 kids gave their life to Christ, but I know that you're going after my 4th kid, and that's okay, but you can't come after me. I'm out of bounds. I'm not interested. I don't want to join a church. I don't want to be baptized. He said, don't worry. We'll leave it at that. So one day, the 4th child decides to get baptized, and the church is getting ready for the baptism. And as this man, the Christian man, steps into the church, he's looking at the baptismal, checking everything's ready, that the water's there and everything's right. And as he's doing that, Dad pops into the church and goes straight up to him. And when he goes up to him, he says, hey, good to see you here. I didn't know you were coming. I'm glad you're here to celebrate your son's baptism. And he's looking straight at him like he's ignoring everything he's saying. He says, today's my day too. And he says, okay, funny joke, haha. Laugh all you want, one day maybe. No, he says, today is my day. In that moment, the neighbor just broke down. Because one day he started praying. He didn't know what he was praying for. He didn't know what outcomes were going to happen. But now an entire family had given their life to Christ because he was obedient to just say yes. To just take that step forward and say, God, whatever way you want me to bless others, whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do it. And throughout that trajectory, they shared time, they listened, they had meals together, they prayed over each other, they shared events together, they shared life together. Not only had a family of giving their lives to Christ, they had also gained a new family, new friends, a new life because they were willing to pray. So what is God putting in your heart today? Who is it that he's wanting you to bless? As we sing this song right now of becoming this new wine for God, about being crushed, about becoming whatever God wants us to become, I pray that we may open our hearts to him. And whatever God is putting in your heart today, I'm going to pray for you as they're singing. I'm going to pray for you that you and I may have the courage to say yes. That as we're blessed, that we may bless others.
In the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender, you are breaking new ground. So I yield to you and to your careful hand. vessel. Make me an offering. Make me whatever you want me to be. God, I came here with nothing but all you have given me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me.
Please stand and join us in our final song.
Through the eyes of men, it seems there's so much we have lost. As we look down the road where all the prodigals have walked, one by one the enemy has whispered lies and led them on their slaves. But we know that you are God, yours is the victory.